The garage door creaked upward, and my pulse hammered in my ears. No Challenger, no black steel, no chrome reflecting the sunset, just a hollow bay and the sour smell of oil. 6 years of 70-hour weeks, gone in the span of one breath. My suitcase hit the concrete as a sick truth bloomed. Someone I trusted had stolen the one thing that proved my sacrifices meant something. The empty space wasn't just loss, it was betrayal, painted in the harsh light of dusk. My name is Maya Brooks. I'm 29, a senior financial analyst, and tonight I discovered my family thinks my dreams are disposable. I stormed through the side door into the kitchen. Mom sat rigid at the head of the oak table, Dad beside her, and Lila, my younger sister, lounging with her phone face down like she was chairing a meeting. "It's temporary," Lila said quickly, her tone sharp and practiced. "A bridge loan for my skincare line. Once sales roll in, I'll pay it all back." Her words hit like acid. My car, reduced to collateral for another one of her paper-thin dreams. "You did what?" My voice came out quiet, but every syllable cracked with danger. Mom leaned forward, voice syrupy, the same one she used to cover overdue bills. "Family helps family, sweetheart. You've done well at Bridgewell. Lila deserves a chance." My fists curled so tight, my nails dug crescents into my palms. Done well. Every dollar had been wrestled from exhaustion, sleepless nights, and missed milestones. And now they'd stolen the one joy I allowed myself. Dad's eyes stayed on the table, his weathered hands flat against the wood. The silence confirmed what I already knew. I snatched the pawn slip lying near Lila's coffee. My gaze locked on the details. Loan amount, auction clause, until one line froze me cold. The listed address wasn't mine. It wasn't even this house. It was my college apartment, a decade-old detail only Mom would remember. The forgery wasn't random. It bore her fingerprints, not just in ink, but in memory. My throat burned, but my words sliced like a blade. "You have 22 days to restore that title, or I press charges." Mom paled. Dad finally raised his eyes. Regret carved deep. "And Lila," she smirked, as if daring me to prove I meant it. But I wasn't bluffing. Before I continue, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and subscribe if you've ever had to fight for your own boundaries. You'll want to hear how this ends. The pawn shop didn't look like the kind of place that should be holding my future hostage. A bell above the door clanged as I stepped inside, the air thick with a mix of stale smoke, cheap disinfectant, and desperation. Glass cases lined the walls, filled with pawned jewelry, guitars, even a wedding dress yellowed at the seams. None of it mattered. My eyes locked on the counter, where a man with thinning hair and a name tag that read Gordon straightened a pile of contracts. "You must be Miss Brooks," he said in a voice flat from repetition. "I have the file here." He slid a stack of paperwork across the scratched glass. My hand trembled as I reached for it. But training from years of financial analysis kicked in. Numbers, clauses, penalties. My brain shifted into auditor mode even as my stomach lurched. Loan amount, $46,000. Fees, escalating into the thousands if unpaid. Auction timeline, 32 days until permanent sale. Then my eyes hit the signature line. My name, written in heavy ink, but the strokes were wrong. The M was jagged, clumsy. The upward curve I always left at the final Y was missing entirely. My pulse roared in my ears. "This isn't my signature," I said, placing my driver's license on the counter. "Compare it yourself." Gordon's eyes flicked between the ID and the contract. His jaw tightened. "Ma'am, if you're alleging fraud—" "I'm not alleging, I'm stating," I cut in, my voice sharper than I intended. For the first time, his practiced neutrality cracked. He shifted the paperwork aside. "Wait here." Minutes crawled by before he returned, this time with a manager and a grainy security still printed on cheap paper. My throat went dry as I studied the image. A figure hunched over the counter, pen in hand, hood pulled low. But there was no mistaking the detail that leapt out. The jacket, faded navy with a Union patch fraying at the edge. My father's jacket, the same one he wore at every cookout, every garage repair, every family errand. The paper shook in my hands. Betrayal had been a possibility before. Now it wore my father's clothes. "Do you want us to file a police report?" the manager asked carefully. "Forgery, title fraud. This is serious." I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. The word police lodged in my throat like a stone. Calling them meant dragging everything into the open. My parents, my sister, all of it. I needed time, I told myself. Time to think, to breathe, to not collapse in the middle of this dingy shop under the weight of it all. I pushed the photo back across the counter. "Hold the file, I'll be in touch." Outside, the late afternoon air felt sharp enough to cut. I clutched my bag, fighting the urge to scream into the empty parking lot. My father. My own father. Then my phone buzzed. A new email notification glared up at me, and the words nearly stopped my heart. Policy suspended. Misrepresentation by household member. I stood frozen on the sidewalk, the world spinning. Not only was my car in danger, my insurance had been compromised. My identity itself was under siege, and the enemy wasn't a stranger. It was family. Back at my apartment, I opened my laptop and stared at the glow of the screen. I told myself I needed to focus on projections for the Frankfurt account, but my fingers refused to move. Instead, they clicked open a folder I hadn't touched in years. Our family photo archive, synced to the cloud. Page after page scrolled by, and each one stabbed, like a reminder of where I stood in this family. Lila's Sweet 16 sprawled across a backyard tent. 50 guests packed shoulder to shoulder. Professional photographer snapping away as she posed in a sparkling pink dress. I searched for my own 16th birthday, but there was nothing. That night, I had been working a cashier shift at the mall, saving every dime for college applications. The absence screamed louder than any picture could. I clicked forward. Lila's high school graduation, Dad renting a limousine so she and her friends could ride in style. When it was my turn to walk across the stage for college graduation, the chairs where my parents should have sat were empty. Their flight had been mysteriously canceled, though somehow they'd made it to Lila's dance recital the very next day. Evidence layered over evidence. Favoritism written in digital ink. The bitterness I had buried for years came rushing back, hot and corrosive. My car wasn't the first thing they had taken from me. It was just the most visible. A knock on my door jolted me back. Jessica, my colleague, and one of the few people I trusted, stood there holding Thai takeout. "You look like hell," she said, not unkindly. Over curry and rice, I spilled everything. Her outrage crackled like electricity, each word validating what I already knew deep down. "Maya, this isn't just family drama. This is criminal. If anyone else forged your signature and pawned your car, they'd be in jail." She pulled her laptop closer. "Give me her business site." I hesitated, then typed the URL for Lila's Shopify store. Jessica's fingers flew. Within minutes, she had scraped recent activity. The screen filled with refund requests, pages of them. Orders canceled, customers furious, complaints about broken packaging and formulas that separated within hours. "This is a sinking ship," Jessica muttered. And she dragged you down to fund it. The validation felt good, but it wasn't enough. I needed more than outrage. I needed proof. Later that night, I opened my banking apps, cross-checking with family accounts I still had partial access to. One connection led to another, until I pulled up a PDF of transactions tied to Dad's Venmo. I expected to see grocery payments, gas money, the occasional dinner bill. What I found instead made my stomach twist. Every month, a neat deposit from Grandma's stipend landed in Dad's account. Within hours, chunks of it transferred straight to Lila's business handle, covering chargebacks, refund demands, shipping failures. My father had been funneling Grandma's retirement money to patch the holes in Lila's fantasy empire. The betrayal doubled over me, sharper than before. It wasn't just my car. It was Grandma's security, too. I sat frozen at my desk, the glow of the monitor painting my apartment in cold light. How deep did this go? How much of my family's loyalty had been redirected, stolen, rebranded as sacrifice for Lila's dreams? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A push alert flashed from the pawnshop's app, the one I had signed up for earlier to track my case. The message was short, almost casual, but it detonated in my chest like dynamite. Private buyer offering cash tomorrow morning. The countdown had just become real. The next morning, I texted Lila. Coffee. Noon. Just us. I chose the cafe halfway between our apartments, a neutral ground where the smell of burnt espresso and chatter of freelancers would make it harder for either of us to shout. She was already there when I walked in, oversized sunglasses covering her face, though the sky outside was gray. She waved half-heartedly and slid a colorful board across the table as I sat down. "This is it," she said, voice brittle. I stared. The board was covered in magazine cutouts, makeup swatches, handwritten product names scrawled in glitter ink. A mood board, nothing more. No supplier contracts, no cost breakdowns, no projections. Just dreams, taped together like a school project. "You stole my car for this?" My voice cracked, sharper than the porcelain cup in my hand. "This is your business plan." She fiddled with her straw. "Creative businesses are fluid. I just need a little more seed money to stabilize things. Once the next shipment lands, I cut her off with a raised hand. "No, stop." Tears welled in her eyes. "Maya, please. I know I messed up, but you have the resources. You always do. Everyone says I should be more like you. Responsible, successful. I thought if I just had one real chance, I could finally prove myself." Her words scraped something raw inside me, but I didn't flinch. I leaned forward, lowering my voice so only she could hear. I earned my chance. I worked for it. I didn't steal it. Her shoulders crumpled, the bravado falling away. For a moment, the cafe noise blurred. I could almost believe I was looking at the little sister who used to follow me around with sticky hands and wide eyes. But that illusion shattered when she whispered again. "Just a little more, Maya. Please." Every instinct screamed at me to call the police, to end this charade once and for all. Jessica's words rang in my head. If anyone else did this, they'd be in jail. And yet, when the moment came, I didn't reach for my phone. I shook my head slowly. No bailout. Fix it yourself, or we all lose. The sentence hung between us like a blade. People will argue forever about whether I was weak or merciful in that moment. Some will say, I should have pressed charges right there, slammed the door shut on years of favoritism. Maybe they're right, but I couldn't. Not yet. Lila buried her face in her hands, muffling a sob. The mood board slid sideways on the table, lipstick swatches smearing into a mess. I stood, tossing a $5 bill beside my untouched coffee. "You better figure it out," I said, "because I'm done cleaning up your disasters." I walked out into the chill Seattle air, my chest heavy, but my spine straight. For once, I had drawn the line. Halfway down the block, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen and froze. A message from Mom glared back at me, an image attached. The picture showed Grandma's heirloom necklace coiled in her palm, its delicate chain catching the kitchen light. Beneath it, a single line of text: "We'll do what we must." The text from Mom replayed in my head all night. "We'll do what we must." I barely slept. At dawn, I found Dad already waiting on the porch, his work boots laced, his union jacket zipped. His voice was low, almost ashamed. "Warehouse still offers a night shift. Differential pay. It's not much, but it'll add up." I looked at his tired face, the deep lines carved by decades of labor. He hadn't worked nights in 20 years, but now he was signing up to save the very car he helped pawn. The irony cut sharp. Meanwhile, Lila started liquidating her vanity. Her prized Hermes scarves, bright silk she used to flaunt on social media, were stuffed into a plain shopping bag. She sold them at a boutique resale shop. Her smile brittle as the clerk counted out bills, far less than their original price tags. The sight should have softened me. It didn't. She was finally bleeding for her choices. Mom, for her part, wrapped the jewelry Dad had given her on their 25th anniversary. Silver earrings, a bracelet, a ring she used to polish every Christmas. She carried them to a different pawn shop, her hands trembling as she signed away pieces that had survived decades of family milestones. Watching her hand over that little velvet box made my chest ache. But I didn't stop her. They needed to feel the cost. And me, I buried myself in numbers. At the office, I volunteered for an extra portfolio reforecast, a mountain of work no one else wanted. If I nailed it, the quarterly performance bonus could bridge the final gap. Every spreadsheet cell I updated felt like another brick in the wall between survival and loss. My boss raised an eyebrow at my sudden eagerness. But I just muttered something about ambition. The truth was simpler: desperation. By midnight, the family gathered around the kitchen table like conspirators in a dimly lit hideout. Crumpled receipts, cash stacks, and pawnshop slips spread between us. Dad placed his first paycheck from the warehouse shift on the pile. Lila added an envelope from the boutique, her manicured nails chipped down to nothing. Mom slid over the pawn ticket for her jewelry. I placed a note about the pending bonus, though it was still weeks away. We were short, painfully short. Then the phone rang. Gordon, the manager at Cornerstone Pawn, didn't bother with pleasantries. "The private buyer is circling. If you want to hold the challenger, you need to put down $18,700 tonight. No deposit, no delay. First money here gets the car." The number hit like a hammer. Nearly 19 grand in cash in the dead of night. My family looked at me, waiting for me to fix it the way I always had. But I stayed silent, staring at the crumpled bills in front of us. Dad finally spoke. "We'll scrape what we can tonight." And so we did. By 3 a.m., we were racing across town, each of us clutching whatever money we had pulled together. The streets blurred, neon signs flickering as if mocking our desperation. At the pawnshop counter, Gordon counted every bill twice, his face expressionless. When the pile was done, he pushed it back slightly, his words clipped. "You're short. 2,400. I glanced at the wall clock. 4:50 a.m. 10 minutes until the cutoff. The weight of the missing dollars pressed down like a stone slab. We had bled nearly everything, and it still wasn't enough. The stack of bills sat between us like a cruel joke. Gordon had counted it twice. his fingers drumming on the counter, and the number hadn't changed. We were short, 2,400. My stomach twisted as if I'd swallowed glass. For weeks, every sacrifice, every late night, every pawned heirloom had been moving us toward this moment. And still, it wasn't enough. Dad leaned against the counter, shoulders sagging. "We'll find it," he said hoarsely. But the clock behind Gordon ticked away, each second mocking him. Back at the kitchen table, silence reigned. Mom kept rubbing the chain of her empty necklace slot, phantom jewelry she'd already surrendered. Lila stared at her chipped nails. The glamour drained from her face. I tried to focus on solutions, on numbers, but exhaustion blurred the columns in my head. Then the front door creaked. Heavy footsteps crossed the hardwood. Uncle Ray filled the doorway, his broad frame blocking the weak light from the hall. He'd always been blunt, but tonight his presence felt like judgment incarnate. "I heard you're still short," he said, voice steady. "I'll cover it." Relief surged. But before anyone could thank him, he raised a hand. "There's a condition. You sign a notarized repayment schedule to Maya, with interest. This isn't a gift, it's accountability." The air thickened instantly. Mom's eyes widened. Dad straightened like someone had slapped him. Lila's mouth fell open, ready to argue. "You can't be serious," Mom whispered. "I've never been more serious," Ray replied. "Maya deserves protection. If you want me in, it comes with terms. No more lies, no more taking her for granted. You all sign." For a long moment, no one spoke. The clock ticked, the fridge hummed, and my own heartbeat thundered. Finally, Dad gave a small nod, his voice gravelly. "If that's what it takes." Lila shifted in her chair, muttering under her breath, but even she didn't push back. She knew she had no leverage left. Mom, though, clenched her fists. "Ray, it was a mistake, not malice. We were trying to—" Ray cut her off. "Trying doesn't erase forgery. Trying doesn't pawn your daughter's car. You want a second chance. Earn it." The pen scratched across paper minutes later, each signature sealing the deal. The weight of their names beneath mine felt heavier than the money itself. For the first time, my boundaries weren't just words. They were law. Yet even in that moment, betrayal wasn't done with me. As the notary packed his stamp, Mom's voice cracked the tense silence. "Maya, there's something you should know." I turned slowly, dread rising. She swallowed hard. "That email from your insurance, the suspension, it was me." The room froze. "I thought I was saving you time," she rushed on. "You were overseas, and the forms came through. I logged in with your password, just to confirm details. I didn't realize it would flag the account for misrepresentation." "I swear, I only wanted to help." Her confession hit harder than any pawn slip. It wasn't just the car, or the money, or even the favoritism. She had crossed into my identity, my security. She had stripped me of the one thing I clung to, control. "You used my login." My voice was ice. "My policy flagged fraud because of you?" Her hands trembled. "I didn't think it mattered." I laughed, bitter and sharp. "It matters when companies freeze your coverage. It matters when they think I'm the liar. Do you understand? You didn't just betray me. You endangered me." Even Dad paled at her words. Lila shifted uncomfortably, suddenly realizing the scope of their meddling. Ray simply leaned back, shaking his head in disgust. The contract lay signed on the table, but my trust was bleeding out faster than any ink could hold it. Before I could speak again, my phone buzzed. The vibration rattled against the wood, sharp and urgent. I picked it up, expecting another email, or maybe Jessica checking in. Instead, a voice on the other end made my heart plummet. "Miss Brooks, this is Cornerstone Pawn. I thought you should know. The cash buyer is standing in our lobby right now." The room spun. We had run out of time. The morning air tasted metallic, sharp with nerves. We had less than an hour before the pawnshop's deadline, and the silence in the car felt like a prayer we didn't know how to finish. Dad's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Mom's lips moved without sound, and Lila kept her eyes glued to the window, her reflection pale against the glass. Uncle Ray sat beside me, a steady anchor in the storm, his presence the only thing holding the atmosphere from splintering apart. We burst through Cornerstone Pawn's doors at 10:54 a.m., the fluorescent lights flickering above us like warning signals. Gordon looked up, surprise flickering across his face. "You're cutting it close," he said flatly. Dad slid the cashier's check across the counter, the culmination of sleepless nights, pawned heirlooms, and every ounce of family pride shredded to keep us alive in this moment. Gordon counted once, then twice, then finally nodded. 11:11 a.m., he announced, stamping the paperwork. "Funds received." The sound of that stamp echoed in my chest. Relief washed over me in a cold rush, followed immediately by something darker. Victory should have tasted sweet. Instead, it felt hollow, like biting into fruit gone sour. Gordon slid the folder across to me. Title restored, keys included. I picked them up, the metal biting into my palm as though reminding me they'd been out of reach for far too long. My hand trembled. The challenger was mine again, legally and physically. But so much had been lost in the fight to reclaim it. We walked to the lot together. There it sat, polished and gleaming, almost mocking me with its perfection. I ran my fingers along the hood, half expecting to feel dents or scratches. Instead, the paint reflected the morning light as if nothing had happened, but everything had. The engine roared when I turned the key, that familiar growl vibrating through the steering wheel, through my bones. Tears blurred my vision, but they weren't pure relief. They were grief, too, for trust fractured, for lines crossed, for sacrifices that could never be undone. Back home, we gathered again, as if ceremony might erase the truth. Mom tried to smile, but it faltered. Dad lingered by the garage, shifting his weight like he was hiding something. Finally, he cleared his throat. "Come with me," he said, gesturing toward the side of the house. Confused, I followed. He led me to a newly built extension, the wood still raw, the paint not yet weathered. He pulled a key from his pocket and unlocked the door. Inside was a bay, just big enough for the challenger. The walls lined with insulation, the floor freshly poured concrete. A keypad blinked beside the doorframe, waiting for a code. "I built this the last few weeks," Dad said quietly. "A secure space. Separate alarm system. It's only for your car." He paused, his voice trembling. "Only if you allow trust again." For a moment, I didn't know how to breathe. This was the same man who had let my car be pawned, who had worn his Union jacket into Cornerstone, who had betrayed me in a way I could barely name. And yet here he was, offering something he had built with his own hands, an apology made tangible. I rested my palm against the cool metal of the new garage door. "It's a start," I whispered, though my heart wasn't ready to surrender fully. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, the keys resting between my hands, relief still tangled with bitterness, neither winning. I opened my laptop and pulled up the card that had been burning a hole in my wallet for weeks. Rachel Holman, attorney at law. The cursor blinked on the screen as I scheduled an appointment. Tomorrow at 9 a.m. Because love or not, apologies or not, I had to decide. Would I press criminal charges for fraud and identity theft, or would I force them into a civil repayment contract? The keys lay heavy in my hand, but the weight of the choice pressed heavier still. 1 week later, I sat at my parents' dining room table again, but this time, the weight in the air was different. No accusations, no bargaining, no desperate math scribbled across notepads. Instead, a stack of contracts lay in the center, neatly prepared by Rachel Holman, the attorney I had met 2 days earlier. The terms were plain: 24 months, fixed interest, auto debit from my parents and Lila's accounts on the first of every month. Every payment would be documented, every cent accounted for. No loopholes, no vague promises, no chance for history to repeat itself. Lila sat across from me, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Gone were the designer clothes, the manicured nails, the bold lipstick she had once worn like armor. She was dressed in a simple blouse and black slacks, the Macy's uniform she had started wearing to her new part-time job. Her hands shook as she signed her name, but her voice was steady when she said, "Every penny will be repaid." I nodded, but didn't smile. Words were fragile things. It was the signatures, the binding ink, that mattered now. Dad signed next, his face lined with something heavier than exhaustion. Remorse, etched deep. Mom followed, her hand trembling as the pen scratched across the paper. Uncle Ray sat at my side like a silent witness, his presence ensuring there would be no backtracking, no manipulation. When it was over, the contracts were gathered, stamped, and filed. For the first time in years, I felt a shift. Not forgiveness, not yet, but structure. A framework for respect, enforced by law, not sentiment. Life adjusted in small but telling ways. Lila began sending me proof of her payments, direct transfers from her modest paychecks. They weren't large, but they were consistent, and consistency mattered more than the amount. Grandma's stipend finally flowed back into her own account, where it always should have been. I changed the garage code and installed a new security system. Mom asked timidly if I would leave a spare key with them, just in case of emergency. I met her eyes, steady, and said simply, "No." She pressed her lips together, but didn't argue. Even she understood now. Some boundaries didn't need debate. They only needed to exist. At night, I would sometimes sit in the Challenger, the engine purring beneath my hands, the leather warm against my palms. It no longer felt like just a car. It was a marker, a line in the sand I had drawn and refused to erase. My grandfather had once told me, "Cars are just metal and chrome. What they represent is what matters." Now I finally understood. This car represented survival, yes, but also the birth of my boundaries. A month later, at a family cookout, the dynamic shifted in ways small, but unmistakable. My relatives whispered, some disapproving, others nodding in quiet respect. Lila admitted openly that she had manipulated my parents, that she had leaned on favoritism until it crushed us all. Hearing her say it out loud didn't erase the past, but it proved the present could be different. As the sun dipped and the smell of grilled food lingered in the air, I realized something I hadn't felt in months, a measure of peace. Not the fragile peace of denial, but the kind born from truth. When love finally meets limits, is that cruelty, or the first honest chance to grow? The answer settled in me slowly, like dusk spreading across the yard. Love without responsibility is entitlement. Love without boundaries is exploitation. Real love, messy, flawed, human love, demands accountability. Forgiveness may come in time, but first there must be respect. And that was the lesson etched deeper than any contract. Protecting my dream wasn't selfish. It was necessary. Because when I honored my own boundaries, I wasn't just reclaiming a car. I was reclaiming myself.